share my screen. Okay, screen, go live. Awesome. I think everybody can hear me, right? Hopefully so. Okay, awesome. Perfect. So I'm really excited to be here. It's very, I love writing technical content, and I'm very happy to be here to talk to you about some tips on that topic. So, hello, my name is Jess Temporal. Actually, it's Jessica Temporal, but you can call me Jess. I'm a senior developer advocate at Auth0, and amongst other things, one of my responsibilities is actually writing technical content. And today I'm going to share with you a few tips we picked up along the way, me and my teammates, especially James, that helped me put together this presentation. Shout out to James. But yeah, that's me. I do a podcast. Also, I have a podcast about data science here in Brazil called Pizza de Dados. It is in Portuguese, so if you speak Portuguese or practice your Portuguese, come and check it out. And I do a lot of stuff, but let's focus on writing. And I divided these tips into two sections. First, writing, when we focus about the words itself, and then later we're going to talk a little bit about structure. And let's begin. The first thing I think these are no in particular order. I think it's important to let you all know this. But the first thing when I come to mind, technical content is actually being concise. It is an ability that I had to develop myself. I tend to do a little bit of history inside my pieces. So being concise is important and is key because your readers are probably trying to answer one of more questions they have, and they don't want the fluff. They want to find the answers for those questions they have, and the problems they are trying to solve. So be concise. Of course, you can have some fluff in there if that's going to help you in your narrative and bringing your point across. But the most important thing is actually to be concise and be direct to the point. And one thing that can help you be concise is actually defining your audience. And that's because if you know the person that is reading or the people that you are intending your piece to, that's going to make it easier to define the steps you need to cover, how long your explanations have to be, and how detailed you must be in your explanations. For example, for a beginner piece, you need to explain every little step of the way because the nature of this reader is actually somebody that needs more hand-holding. They need to know each step. They need to understand each step. But for more experienced developers, they actually don't need so much hand-holding. They can move along more quickly, and they want to get to the questions themselves as soon as possible. Other than being concise and knowing your audience, a good tip is to actually minimize the sentence length. And that's one that is particularly difficult for me. I tend to write long sentences. It's something that I always have to work on after I finish my first draft. And long sentences doesn't help understanding, and your main goal should always be that the reader understands you. So minimizing sentence length actually helps somebody understand what you are trying to say and also focus on what is important for the moment. So keep that in mind that, oh my God, should I not write long paragraphs? Sometimes you might have to, but try to keep those to a minimum. And another good thing to always remember is that you should always do a spell check. some readers that I know, some developers that are reading your technical content, if they see too many grammar errors or typing errors, they are very suspicious of the content that you're displaying, of the content that you're explaining. So if they see that many errors, they might not trust what you're bringing to the table. So always do a spell check. And there are many editors that have an ability to do spell check, so why not do it? Is you have to take advantage of the tools that you have, right? And there are a number of other tools that I know has been shared with you yesterday, because I took a sneak peek on the presentations from yesterday, that can help you make sure that your writing is correct. And for me, this tip is the most underrated one. Usually after I finish a draft, I try to always read that draft out loud, especially the longer ones, those long tutorials, because one, it helps me out finding pieces of the content that I need to make more clear. It helps me find out longer sentences that I need to make smaller. It helps me find out typos and grammar mistakes that would not make a good experience in reading my piece. And even though it might seem weird at the beginning, once you first do a readout of your own blog post, trust me, you're going to catch those little errors way sooner if you start reading them out loud. Now, let's talk about structure, because nothing matters if you don't have a good looking piece, right? You need to be pleasing to the eyes for the person that is reading, and you need to make your piece easy to access the information that the reader is looking for, because believe it or not, you are not the main character of your technical content. The reader is. You're trying to explain something to someone, and that someone is the most important person for your content. So we need to make that person's lives easier. And I usually start doing two things in every technical content that I write. One is defining the prerequisites. And by this, I mean, like, if you need a version of some library, you need to define that. If you need some other tool that a person might have or might not have, you need to explain that to the person reading. And for example, I am a Pythonista, I'm a Python developer, and most of my technical content is about Python. And if you know Python, you probably know that Python has many versions that you can work with, and they all live simultaneously. You don't have only one version to choose from. So that can mean that your code might not work in certain versions. So the first thing that I usually do is I'm using Python version 3.8 or Python version 3.6, because that will impact the experience of the person who is reading. So start by defining the prerequisites once you have to structure your piece. Another good thing to do, and this is helpful for both you and the reader, is defining the learning outcomes. Have you ever tried to write a piece and at the end you say, oh, I didn't answer that question that I thought I was answering? It has happened to me before. If you start writing a lot, it probably is going to happen to you someday. And defining the outcomes will help you keep in mind and keep in sight what you need to answer, what questions you are working with. And it also will help your reader know what they are going to get from your blog post, from your article. So it's always good to define your learning outcomes to help you achieve what you want to achieve with that blog post, and help the reader understand what they can expect from your piece. There is this funny joke that I read on Twitter the other day, that it is only a clickbait if you under-deliver. So defining your learning outcomes is helpful to not under-deliver. Let me grab me some water. And one other thing that you always think when you talk about structure of a technical blog post is actually having clear headers. Because believe it or not, most people that read a technical blog post, they don't read it top to bottom. They're going to read that section that is going to answer their questions. They are going to read that section that has the piece they want to learn. So having clear headers is really important because then people can find easier what they are looking for. And also, it helps your content rank better in Google. So Google finds that headers are the most important part of a blog post for defining if that blog post answers certain type of questions. So having clear headers helps you actually have your technical content rank better. I know it is very tempting to try to be funny and make jokes on your headers and so on. But keep in mind that clear headers is more important. And on the matter of headers, actually, if you have clear headers, including a table of contents is actually easier. So if you have a table of contents, somebody that is reading your article can actually look through the table of contents and say, oh, this is the section that I want, instead of just scrolling down and trying to find what they need in the content, in the text, right? So including a table of contents is going to help your reader always in the beginning, finding what they need to find. And some people I know don't like to use bullet points actually, but actually bullet points is a very good way for breaking up long sentences or long paragraphs, because then you bring the eye attention to that important piece that is inside one of those bullet points. So if you have a long paragraph and it all makes sense in a long paragraph, but a wall of text is not as friendly, so including bullet points instead of a long paragraph might be a way out of the long paragraph and make it easier to show what is important on that section. And talking about breaking long walls of text, I find it, and some people that I know also find it, it can be really overwhelming reading a technical content and that technical content be only pure text from top to bottom. No breaks, no more visual aids for them to understanding. So use images and GIFs to your advantage. I'm particularly addicted to GIFs, but keep in mind that you don't want to overwhelm the reader as well. So a well-placed GIF or image can be a powerful addition to your blog post. And by this, I mean, you instead of explaining the flow of something without an image and only a wall of text, you could add an image, add some pointers to the points that you need to pay attention to, and then explain those points in bullet points. That will make your readers' lives easier because then they can see what they are imagining and make sure that you are both on the same page. And GIFs, well, I tend to use GIFs to bring pauses to my text, especially for the long tutorials. Sometimes the reader needs a pause. And why not put that into your text, right? If you were giving a tutorial at a conference, for example, you probably would achieve something and make a pause and talk to everybody, see how they are doing, if they got to the same point as you in your explanation. And GIFs is a way that you can do that as well. Why not use GIFs for giving your reader a pause and they can absorb and think about the things that they did so far. This is actually something funny because sometimes I was reading a blog post and I saw somebody that instead of adding the code to the blog post, they had an image. And images are not friendly. They are not friendly for two reasons. First, you probably, when you add an image, you don't add alternative text to it. So people that have seen disabilities, they are not able to see what is in that image. And if you don't have an alternative text without the code in it, they are probably not going to read your blog post because they are not going to understand that beautiful block of code because it is an image. And the second reason is probably the person that is reading your content, they want to copy and paste that code into their example, into their code base, right? So you need to make their reader life easier once more and have that code in there so they can copy and paste. If you are developing your blog, for example, and I'm not saying you should do that, we know sometimes that can be a rabbit hole, but you're for developing your blog, why not include a copy button on the code snippets? That would be great, right? Just click, copy the code, add it, test it out on your VS Code or whatever. That would be great. And a final tip that I have is actually to add a call to action on your blog post. So there is no problem in asking people for things, especially after you taught them something with the free content, right? So you could ask them to follow you on social media to keep up with more content that you have coming next, or to give you a tweet about the content that they just read. So add a call to action, make your technical content work for you. Those were a few tips that I wanted to share with you today. Hopefully this can help you remind of some of the tips that you saw yesterday, and try writing the more that you can, because the more that you write, the better you get at it. These were the tips that I had today for you. Once more, I'm Jess Temporal, and it was great to be with you here today. And hopefully I'll see you soon. Follow me on Twitter. Does anybody has any questions? Yes. Oh, I saw one here. How do you determine or decided who your audience are for a technical writing gig? Well, for a technical writing gig, you're probably going to be talking to developers of that product. For example, I'm going to talk about Auth0, right? So my technical writing gig is actually writing blog posts for Auth0 to help developers use our product. So usually when you are going to decide one of the pieces that you have to write, you are going to think, oh, this is going to be a beginner focused piece. I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to teach all the steps all of the way, and then I'm going to achieve X, Y, and Z results with that blog post. Usually when you're trying to have to decide, you're going to talk to your manager or the person that hired you to see who they are trying to reach. And that's the most important thing. Deciding who you are trying to reach will tell you how into detail you have to go into your blog post. Did I answer that? Hopefully so. If not, send more questions. Question 2. Talking about adding code snippets to your article. Is it better to include a code snippet that the reader can easily copy and paste, or one that the reader cannot copy? Well, for me, it is better to have something that they can copy and paste. It can be really frustrating if they can't copy something that they need to test on their sample, something especially if they are following along with a tutorial. If they can copy, they are probably not going to execute the steps in the tutorial. They are going to only read what is written and trust your word for it. But the goal is to have somebody achieve something on their machine, not only follow along with your content. So have the content, there's code snippets there will make your life easier and the reader's life easier. So I always prefer to have that available for copying. Question 3. For a beginner into a technical writing, what are the best platforms to get writing gigs? That's a good question. I do not know. Because I never did get writing gigs from any writing platforms, for to be honest. My writing came from my blog, where I wrote blog posts for myself at the beginning. And my idea would basically to have this notebook of notes and code snippets that I could share with my friends and that I could search through if I needed to have that code once more easily. So I don't have an answer for that question. I'm so sorry. uh, question 4. How do you make your readers engage with your content more? Well, I believe call to actions are the way to do that, especially if you want to see a result from that. For example, one thing that I always do at the end of my blog post is actually say something very simple like, hey, did you like this content? Did you build your own website? If it's a tutorial about building your own website. What did you think about it? Send me your website. I'd love to check it out, and things like this. And people who turn up and tweet at me to show what they did, or reply in the comments saying that thing helped them solve a problem in their work or something like that. So that's usually what I do, and has been turning out great. Another thing that you could do actually is to repurpose your content. Once you get a blog post done, you could do a video and add that video into the blog post. You could do a thread on Twitter and put the highlights of the blog post on Twitter, and then in the last tweet actually add a call to action to your blog post. Oh, if you want to see more details, check out my blog post about this topic, and things like this, because people learn in different ways and people like to interact in different ways. Some people like to write a comment on a blog post, some people like to tweet it out. So the more options you have out there, the better for you, the better engagement you get back from the community. And I think that's it. If somebody has any more questions, I'm still going to be here for half an hour more. And you can send it out on the chat channel, and I will reply to them. Okay, that's it. Thank you.